On today's show.
When should you start working with an editor on your next book? It's a great question. It's something I get asked a lot, is when is the ideal time to start? And it is one of those things that you want to be careful about starting with an editor too early. But what I always tell people is a great ideal point to start is when you've got at least your first 2,000 to 3,000 words done. And the reason for it is ultimately there's two parts of having an editor that I find so important for anyone writing a book. The first thing is sort of this idea of improving of your writing. I think one of the biggest things that stops writers is they write a whole bunch of stuff and then they hand it to people and they're like, yeah, that's not very good. Versus someone who's writing every week or every other week and getting feedback on it, you see that really the progression of the writing happen very, very quickly. So rather than making the same mistakes for 20 or 30 or 40,000 words and then getting feedback, this idea, this iterative feedback is so important. The second reason is ultimately accountability. And this is something that I think for most amateur writers, people who don't do this professionally, having someone that can go through and essentially be that weekly accountability buddy. Hey, I'm going to get you something. In fact, I'm paying you to read something is a nice, strong motivator. It's a little bit like having a gym buddy, someone that you know is along the way. So my advice is once you have your first, sort of 3,000 to 5,000 words or so done, you've got the concept in your head, find an editor. They're not necessarily people that, have to be reading every single thing for commas and periods, but developmental editing is so critical early on. I'll tell one quick story of a friend of mine named Matthew Norman. He is a four-time novelist, has had some great acclaim in the world of sort of novels. It was sort of a comedy twist to them, but he talked about his first two novels. It took him almost 8 or 9 years in between the first one and the second one, and part of it was because he was writing alone. He was working on this himself. The most recent two came out about 18 months apart from one another, and he talks about the experience, how different it was having an editor along the way of developing this kind of concept of where you write something, you share a chunk of words, you get feedback, and you see how it improves. That process really helps not only make for a better book, but ultimately get the book out much faster and quicker. So when you're thinking about an editor, my advice is wait until you've got a couple thousand words down for sure. You've got some ideas and sort of you're committed to make this happen. Then find someone that you can have that accountability loop with, really doing something of a 15 to 30 minute call every week, sharing content, having them review it. That goes a long way to helping you succeed. So never write alone, find people to help you. Community powered writing is so important, particularly for today's modern writer.